The following is an Operation Podcast production. GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy, which they just crush with the ads. I love seeing all their jingles, are everywhere right now. One major study found that people lost and actually kept off up to 20% of their body weight over 2 years. That's 40 pounds for someone who weighs 200 plus, which is where unfortunately, a lot of Americans are. Researchers are finding benefits that go way beyond weight loss. We're talking about improvements in liver health, even early signs that they may lower the risk of things like dementia and Alzheimer's. But it's not all just hype, right? Which we're going to get into here with you, Ashley, is that there are also concerns about muscle loss and even side effects. So we're curious, what's fiction and what should we know before considering them? So with that, Ashley Koff, welcome to the show. I'm here to just pick your brain on all that and so much more.
Yeah. Hi, I'm dietitian Ashley Koff. I'm founder of Your Best Shot and the Better Nutrition Program, and welcome to Ever Forward Radio. And I've been in practice for a little 25, 27 years, and, in Los Angeles. So I've sort of ridden the trend of all of these different skinny shots. It kind of feels like I remember when it was Adderall, and I remember kind of rolling through all these different. When I first heard about GLP-1, it was because it was not when I went to school to become a dietitian, and I would offer that most physicians are also not learning about this when they go to school to become a physician. But it was when I saw my first bariatric patient. So in about 2004, when I saw bariatric patients, we were actually going in and figuring out how is it that literally overnight your diabetes and your perceptions around food, appetite, hunger, cravings, all the thoughts about food, all of this was changing. And so it led us to these things called incretin hormones. So your incretin hormones are made in the lining of the digestive tract, GLP-1 being one of them, GIP being the other one. So when we talk about a single agonist, semaglutide, GLP-1, when we talk about a dual agonist, tirzepatide, GLP-1, and GIP, but we have others. We have PYY, we have CCK, we have many others. Why is that important? Because what's being presented today as game changer is a medication. The game-changing impact for all of us, whether you ever touch a GLP-1 agonist or not, is that it has exposed to us an important part of our body, of our physiology. So the body is designed with these weight health hormones. They're in the lining of the digestive tract, and they are the ones that they're like the first domino in a chain of dominoes that actually stimulate all these different reactions. So when we understand that we have weight health hormones and that modern day is really challenging those weight health hormones in terms of being able to function optimally, that's the introduction that we actually need. So something could be a skinny shot. Something could also be potentially problematic. There are all these different spaces. But what is not for debate here is that we as a society are primarily functioning with suboptimally functioning of these weight health hormones, so of GLP-1, GIP. So what got me really excited about is I have been working with this with patients. So I've been optimizing digestion, doing hydration tune-up, working on vagus nerve work, working on nutrient optimization, all these different things to optimize the function of these weight health hormones. And now with the shot, I can actually talk about it. We can come in and we can say what do I do for this person? Well, this person might be a good contender for the shot for a GLP-1 agonist, but this person may not be. But regardless, both of them need that optimization. So it's an exciting time. Yeah.
Time, speaking of, I don't know if everyone caught when you were first hearing about this, 2004.
2004.
So what, 20 years?
Plus-ish? When I was 5. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm 52
yes,
now.
Exactly.
That's right. It's and for me, this is super personal. So I was a chubby kid. I was super cute. I looked like Shirley Temple, and everybody's like, oh, she's adorable, that kind of thing. But then when I became 10, 11, I wasn't cute anymore. And that was when I was a fat kid because I had a belly, right? And so then it was, and at that time, I was considered fully healthy. And for quite some time, everybody was like, you're healthy, you're just fat. So it was, you need to diet, right? So you need to eat less and ultimately you need to exercise more. Now, I happen to live with brothers, and I come from a family of all men. And so I was never treated any differently. I'm I can play like a boy. I can do there was never anything, but I was I'll eat like a boy, And so I'm okay, maybe I have to cut down on what I eat, but I never felt full. And I never, when I would try different diets, they wouldn't work for me. And later on in college, I tried eating disorders. That didn't work well, especially because I was a lacrosse player. And
wait. you said tried.
I tried to have,
consciously?
Consciously. Cause I met people who had eating disorders,
Like,
and
I think
I was
I'll just
like,
try on bulimia today.
I'm gonna literally tried vomiting. I hate vomiting. I will never that was the worst. I tried exercise bulimia. Like I would go and I would spend like 3 hours on and I would stand next to this woman who was an exercise bulimic, and she got thin and I didn't,
Sorry, when you say exercise bulimic, you mean exercising
trying to
the
exercise
point
over her
of-
calories. Oh, so it was, so
not
exercise.
trying to exercise to the point of vomiting.
No, not to vomiting. So it was like in that regard. So I think it was more of a, the
Orthorexia?
disorder. Well, orthorexia is the disease of trying to be perfect in your eating, which we have a lot of now on that part. She would, her whole goal was whatever I eat, I want to, and I would say this is when people would shoot. We used to do this with exercising, right? You type into the elliptical or the stair climber how many calories, and you're like, well, if I'm going to eat 2,000 calories, I'm going to burn 4,000 calories, right? And I would watch it work for somebody. It wasn't working for me. This led all the way to when I was about 21. I had moved to Manhattan. I was working in advertising. I was helping create commercials to sell sugared cereals. So Smart Start, Raisin Bran Crunch.
No
you
way.
bet. To tell you that they were better for you, like all of that.
Smart Start, that's a throwback.
I was on the wrong side, Sugar Smacks, you name it. So I'm working on that. I'm panic stricken. Like I would have horrible panic attacks. I never slept during the night. For the first time in my life, I had skin issues. My bowel issues were so bad that walking around in Manhattan, I had to know where the bathrooms were. This was before Starbucks and, all of that. And for me, I was like, what is going on? It was the first time in my life that I was actually like, oh, maybe I don't just have a belly or a fat issue. Maybe there's a health issue. No doctors. Nobody could help me, on that part. And I met this healer in yoga she had fiery red hair and she was gorgeous. And she's like, I think I know what's wrong with you. Come to my house. She pricked my finger, looked at my blood. It was probably a Fisher-Price microscope, I'm going to tell you. There was nothing legit about this. And she diagnosed me with a worm. And she said, you have a worm. And I bet you've had this worm since you were 15. And the only way to kill the worm is to do a goat's milk only cleanse. I'm not even joking. I go and I do this goat's milk cleanse for 7 days. And let me tell you, was like a game changer for me. She's like, goat's milk is the perfect food. It's got carbohydrate, it's got protein, it's a good cell, got fat, you're going to be, and it kills the worm and you're going to see the worm pass. Because when you look at your poop, it's going to be white and gray. Well, spoiler alert, if the only thing you're having is goat's milk in your diet, your poop is going to look like a worm passing.
Yeah, the color palette's pretty much already set.
That was going, right? So I've got a point to this. So we go through and I kill the worm and I have a flat belly and I had taken off 10 pounds in 7 days and I felt amazing. And
you lost 10 pounds in 7 days
of a belly. Yep, 40 ounces. I even took it to the bar. I had them pour it over a rocks glass so that it looked to other people like I was normal. Oh, the bartender's like, you're shit. And I was like, oh, I'm crazy. I want everybody else. They thought I was drinking White Russian.
And this is in Manhattan.
Yeah, this is Manhattan. But keep in mind, this is circa 1997, I guess, on that part.
Wow.
So I'm there. And the problem was on day 9 or day 10, as soon as I went back to, and by the way, I was not unhealthy. I was a macrobiotic vegan who was going to yoga and I didn't drink alcohol, right? So I'm doing all of this. And I started to eat again. And what happened? My belly returned. The weight comes up. it was the worst, post-cleanse. I was in the doldrums. I was so bummed out. I had all hope. I'd been chanting, kill the worm. I'm going, I got this, I'm doing it. So I started drinking again. So I went to a bar and this is when the world just delivers something to you. This was I sometimes still wonder, did this really happen in my life? I'm at the bar, day drinking after hot yoga. So I'm now wasted, chanting kill the worm with these guys who are laughing with me, probably at me. And this guy sitting in the corner is eating a burger and he goes, hey, just got a question for you. And I'm like, yeah, He goes, did you ever take antibiotics as a kid? And I was like, I literally was like, that's your pickup line? I was just blown away. I'm like, who are you? I'm like, yeah, I'm a kid of the 70s. I said, yeah. So I thought it was real funny. I'm like, I freebased them. I was like, are you kidding? Before an ear infection, after a throat, I'm like, I had ear infections, throat infections my whole life.
My middle name is amoxicillin.
Yeah, I was like, here you go. I'm like, I'm now allergic to penicillin, et cetera. And he's like, yeah. So I'm actually know what's wrong with you. And he's like, it's not what you, and literally I ended up going to see him. He was, before there was such a thing, he was an integrative gastroenterologist or a functional, gastroenterologist. And he said the best thing to me ever. He said, it's not what you're eating. Your body doesn't have what it needs to run better. And he started me with a probiotic. And then we moved on to glutamine. Then I learned about magnesium. Then I learned, so that completely changed the trajectory of my life. Why am I telling you that? We, in that moment, repaired my weight health hormones. But for a good 20 years and start of my practice, I always thought it was just digestion. I'm like, oh, we got to heal your digestion. But when you heal your digestion, that's actually what corrects your weight health hormones, because they're made in the lining of the digestive tract.
Wow.
So that's when I was doing that with bariatric patients. So some people would have a bariatric surgery, but they wouldn't do any of the digestive work, right? So when we take a root cause, you mentioned your wife on the functional medicine, when we take a root cause approach to any of this and we come in and we're like, let's build you up from your digestion, we are repairing your body system for optimizing weight health. So here's the spoiler alert in all of this. If you go on Ozempic or you go on Wegovy, anything on that part, and you have any degree of benefit, you have just proved out my theory. Your weight health hormones were suboptimally functioning. The reason you can't go off of them is if you don't fix the underlying problem, which is not that you were eating too much or that you don't exercise enough, but if you don't fix the actual hormones, the production, the deployment, their ability, then you're always going to have to stay on that medication. So that's happening. When they talk about side effects with these medications, they're saying things like, you might be nausea, vomiting, you might get constipated. There's even a name of Ozempic constipation on TikTok where people are they call it Ozempic constipation. They've named it, on that part, or Ozempic poop, where it's you're lucky if you poop every 4 days or, and it's pellets. And I was like, you guys, it's not that medication is doing this. The medication is exacerbating the suboptimal function of your own digestive system starting from the get-go. So anyone who's going to use a medication, who's ever going to consider it, anyone who has benefit, anyone who does go on it, you have to work on this weight health optimization. So that's the part that got me really excited.
Great. I'm all done. Thank you so much.
There we go. Yeah, right?
I want to get into, particularly let's kick things off, specifically here. I got some segments outlined for the episode around what I've understood these, skinny shots, air quote here, to be, that I think a lot of people are gravitating towards. Things like weight loss and body changes, whole body benefits, and then even getting into newer options, convenience, and, real life concerns post Ozempic. So besides your story, which was amazing, thank you so much for sharing that. I think a lot of people are having similar stories and similar calls to action based on life experiences for semaglutide, GLP-1s.
Yes.
One big study, and again, this will all be linked in the show notes. One big study showed people lost and kept off significant weight for 2 years, like I mentioned, with semaglutide. So why is sustained weight loss so important? And how do these medications help people do what's often been so hard to achieve? And that's not only get the weight off, but keep it off.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so the first thing is there's stuff we have to unlearn. The stuff we have to unlearn is that total weight number. So one of the problems with some of the studies of people saying that we lost this amount, or now it's this medication's better because we lose more, total body weight. And we're just keep looking at total body weight. And as well as I know, that it's not your total body weight. The indicator of your health is going to be your fat mass, your muscle mass, and your bone health, right? So the first thing in there is, of that subset of people, were those people the ones that had better results? Were they people that actually put on or retained their muscle? And we don't know that from this study. So that's a little bit
so
we'd have to
only
unpack
measuring
that.
total weight,
That's
not
right.
free fat mass to
That's
muscle
right.
mass.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because when you make muscle or when you keep muscle, you're going to keep your fat burning ability at a higher level. I mean, there are all these benefits to muscle, right? I remember sitting with at the time, the head of the Army. This was back, we were talking about our DC days.
Yeah.
And he said to me, Ashley, we need you bad. He's like, we have a real problem because we have so many people who are not qualified to come and join the Army. And I said, well, your real problem is you're using BMI. It's like, we have to use body mass index.
Don't even get me started.
Right?
Yeah.
I was like, you would have 75% of the NFL disqualified if we just used BMI on that part. We want our military, blow up the BMI. We want you heavy, but we want you heavy of muscle, right? In terms of, what that's going to do for your body and making sure we're protecting your bone and, that kind of thing. So in that space, a lot of this research that's coming out on the agonists is problematic because it's only looking at total body weight. And when we see significant differences, like when they say people who were on it and then regained their weight, Number one, did they regain their weight because they didn't fix anything underneath? Or did they regain their weight because the weight that they lost was they lost a lot of muscle along with their fat mass? And then that dropped to their caloric burn and, and it comes back on that part. You ask the question, why is sustaining your weight much more important on that part? Because at the end of the day, the body does not like to have dramatic fluctuations in weight. That will tell it that it's very scared, right? So many people from a genetic standpoint are designed, like me. I used to say like I was designed to be like Jabba the Hutt. I'm like, when you look at my genes, I am meant to just be not just obese, but like to hold on to everything. So that was really important for me to learn because I knew I had to be active, but I also have to be very careful with how much I eat at one time. That genetic information is helpful. But when you reframe it, I actually have survivor genes. So I'm going to be long after you all are like real hungry and like whittling away, and the people that aren't going to, I'm surviving because my body just hangs on to things, right? But for that person who's genetically, there's a Compton, and we can look at the whole your leptin. We can a lot of the genes in there.
The warrior gene.
The warrior gene. We can look at the snack gene. Yeah. So if you're somebody who has difficulty,
these are real things.
Whole profile.
It's wild what can happen when you get a comprehensive metabolic panel done and genetic testing as well.
When you look at and you merge the two. I
did that
right?
last summer, the summer before. Mind blowing.
Mind
blowing.
And what's real interesting too, and it speaks to the weight health side of things, is I did that about 5 to 7 years before I was really in perimenopause. Talk about looking at your body in a different way when you're then in perimenopause, because I came back and I was like, oh. So I kind of cruised through, like when I had it done at like in my early 40s, I was like, oh, endurance athlete, like get out there, like no risk of inflammation. You can just go do. Well, then hit perimenopause and have your hormones just decide to like some days like not show up to work and some days in overdrive. And all of a sudden my blood markers were like all over the place. And I was like, what is going on? It's like, okay, it's perimenopause. I was able to go back to my genes and be like, what can I play to from a strength standpoint? How can I, reorganize this? So when we look at our weight health hormones, that your genetic information is going to be real important for that sustaining. And what we have to understand is the body, whether you're in a survivor body type or whether you're, some people like just burn through stuff like all the time. And if your body feels like it is unsafe, your vagus nerve is going to turn around and be like, I'm not transporting stuff. So your messages aren't going to go where they're supposed to go. Your brain gut messaging isn't going to, that's going to play out in your gut health. It's going to play out in your brain health, your cognitive health. It's going to play out in inflammation. So what we never want to see is we never want to see yo-yo dieting, right? We never want to see that impact. And the concern of a lot of people is if we use these medications, and I think it's playing out, when we use them incorrectly, that's what we end up seeing. So it is important to see that we can see sustained what I'll call, in the ideal world, sustained weight composition. Yeah.
Have you seen the recent Biggest Loser documentary on Netflix?
I haven't watched it. Yeah. So I did the.
Hoping to ask your opinion on it.
Well, and so I've given an opinion because I did Shedding for the Wedding. So I was the on-air dietitian for 4 reality shows. Okay,
so similar.
Yes, totally. And same production company. Yeah. So the reason I couldn't watch it is I couldn't watch it. So I'm on that part. But I've seen a lot of the what people have talked about and that piece. What was your take on it? I'm curious.
I'll say, one, it was made in a way, like pretty much every documentary, that has, I felt it had a predetermined bias. They were coming for the throats of the production team, even, Bob and Jillian, and kind of their methodology towards weight loss, compared to the amount of people that have either kept the weight off or the people that have put the weight back on. It's not just they regained the weight, some of the weight, they regained it all, plus they're even bigger, like by hundreds of pounds heavier than when they started. Yeah. So I felt like they had interviews with the production team. I think the guy came up with the idea and a couple of the producers, and they had Bob. Jillian denied it. And they even had the medical officer on deck. I forget his name. The
Dr.
MD.
Huizinga? Or
yes.
No, yeah.
So I felt like it was a pretty fair representation of all parties involved. Yeah. But I do feel like it was skewed towards like you effed up. Yeah. You did wrong, and a lot of these people are not only suffering physically, but there was significant, obvious, in my opinion, emotional, mental health damage as well. Right. Yeah. But I also felt like, and I think this is maybe my bias of working in the healthcare field in concierge medicine with weight loss, lifestyle behavior change for years, I felt like it was a little unfair because of the time that it came out.
Yeah.
I don't feel like, at least not we're making a TV show where, again, remember here, people, the goal is to sell ads, to get views, to get ratings, not necessarily for total 360 encompassing weight loss, lifestyle, behavior change. I felt like it was a little unfair because we didn't really have this approach, and not really in a clinical model.
Right.
I was working in clinic 2013 to about 2018. And even then, the nuance of getting mindset, behavior change integrated with nutritional programming, exercise periodization, coupled with working with traditional allopathic care labs was so like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is new. How are we going to get so many people on board? This is just a 360 approach.
Yeah.
And so I felt like it was a little unfair for them because, looking back, how many times in the wellness and nutrition space do we go, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. And 10 years from now, oh, actually, it's not that bad.
Right.
Or like methodology towards weight loss, especially, was pretty damn hardcore. Whereas now we're realizing the pendulum swings the other way of going, we got short-term results, but long-term, we're suffering greater consequences.
Yeah. Okay, so you said so much there that I'm like, yes. Okay, so first of all, I think there's a great point that comes out of this. And in 2013, it was the second year of the digital health conference or summit at Consumer Electronics Show. And I did a talk there with Dr. Oz, so we can, bringing all this, Jeff Arnold, who had founded ShareCare, the gentleman, I'm blocking his name, who was the head of the American Diabetic Association and then an Olympic athlete. And it was just the start of where we could track data. And everybody was so excited about, it was I was working with Jawbone at the time.
That was when like Fitbit,
so I was working with Jawbone, right? Like does anyone even remember Jawbone? Okay, so Jawbone. So we since have such an epidemic of infobesity. So our brains are so full of information. And that was ushered in by multiple different factors that, really started with, what advertising basically has taken the place of educating people about their health for decades now. And we've let pharmaceutical companies come in and be on TV and say go talk to your doctor about this. Right. Oh, 100%. That's what I'm saying.
Only America is allowing pharmaceutical advertising.
Yes, exactly. We've let this. So when we look at that, there is no question, I talk about this in my book, one of the things the ways that you can lose weight the best right off the bat is to lose literally the weight of the information that's in your brain about what is right or not in terms of nutrition. We are just get rid of it. The reason you and I do what we do, the reason your wife does what she does is because we know at the end of the day, information about nutrition, it helps me pass my exam, and that's it on that part. And then I come in and I'm curious about you. And there are things that, and research may show us information like, hey, think about this in this way or consider this, whatever. But at the end of the day, what will actually work for your body is when we get insights about your body. It's why I'm obsessed with assessment. When we come in and we have to assess, how is your body working today, right? So if I have somebody and I ask them a question do you feel full after eating? I need that answer as much as I need to know what your labs are. But I definitely can't just go and get a lab and say oh, your iron is low. Let me give you an iron supplement. That doesn't work. There are 12 reasons your iron could be low. Why is your iron low?
Especially if you're a female.
Exactly. And now let's put a plan together. So in the time period of when reality shows hit, and let's also just not be specific just to weight loss, reality shows came in to let us be voyeurs and maybe to also, there were cooking shows and there were all these different things for us to start to see, but they were, as you said, they were clever marketing where it was let's come in and show, on this part. Well, my savviness with that was prior to doing reality TV shows. Remember, I sold sugared cereals. So first I sold sugared cereals. Then I worked in print media and in terms of as an expert, I was doing, interviews. So you pick up a People magazine and you would see, in January when they do the weight loss issue before The Biggest Loser, 5 of my clients were in there. And what they were saying in People magazine wasn't what they were doing, or they were missing the point that, that person has Crohn's, or this person, can't do this, or, whatever on that piece. So what we saw was edutainment, in that place. And I think if we don't call that spade out, that's really important. The
100%,
other thing is
100%.
millions of Americans watched The Biggest Loser and did their version of getting healthier at home.
Tens of millions.
Tens of millions. So thank you. Like tens of millions. Now, today we would be like, well, let's start with repairing your gut, or, let's do that part. Now, I will say my experience was that nothing that I said or did on air was what was actually working for my clients. I would stay. So I would go and I would do the segment that they want. Today we're going to do a segment about how to make a high protein snack that's great for everyone. So, we'd go and do that and be like, this is what everybody's having for lunch tomorrow. Maybe 2 people had it for lunch. And then I would leave and I would talk to the couples, because it was shredding for the wedding, about, hey, your ankle is hurting, so let's try to do this part or do this a little bit differently. You aren't pooping. You should have some magnesium. You would be better with liquid nutrition because after a workout, your body's really stressed, those kinds of things. So it was personalization that would actually, help them on that part. So you don't see that on a TV show. Where I think the rubber meets the road is you are culpable if you are taking information, if you're watching any TV show, if you're seeing what your favorite celebrity is doing on TikTok or anywhere else on that part, and you decide to go do it, on that part. And by the way, that holds true for your favorite doctor or your favorite podcaster. I had somebody who was taking 2 LMNTs every single day. Guy comes in to see me. The doctor's like, Element, or I'm sorry, I call it LMNT, okay. But Element. And I was like, what? And he's like, oh, well, I listened to Andrew Huberman's podcast. I'm like, I love the podcast. Great. And he's like, well, he does. And I was like, okay, first of all, let's start with, I think he's 6'5". This guy was like maybe 5'8", like on that part. I don't know how tall.
Andrew's a big guy.
Yeah, he's a big guy. So let's start with that. Second of all, he will talk about his workouts. This guy not working out. This guy drinking a lot, yes, and also a business executive. So also this guy raging high blood pressure and not metabolically healthy. And I'm like, you listened to a podcast and you did what he did. Or my inbox will be filled with, did you see Peter Attia's new newsletter? What do you think? Like, I also have, an ApoB of this. Like, should I do? And I was like, we're working on your plan based on your data, based on who you are. So
how many people got
beware,
scared of Apo, by the way, when they saw him with Chris Hemsworth on that Limitless documentary?
Yes.
And that was just like mass hysteria, mass misinformation application.
Yes, exactly. Well, I had a fun one when I was out here in LA. This was a little bit before like the email, before people were texting like that and on the email front. But there was a study that came out years ago that looked at fish oil supplements and prostate health. And there was some debate, it was not a good study. There was some debate about whether or not fish oil was actually bad for your prostate health. We've moved on. But I came back and I had hundreds of messages. And some of them were pretty violent. They were like, you put me on this. Like, you told me to take fish oil, whatever. They were from females.
Come on.
I'm not even kidding.
I was going to say, please tell me.
I'm not even kidding. I'm not kidding you. You don't have a prostate.
Prostate is just for the guys out there.
Like, let's just, like, if I have to clear anything up, like, yes. And so I was like, so let's hit the pause button. So what that tells me is you need to be responsible. So I have everybody basically map out all their sources of information, of where they're getting their information. And unless yours is a bullseye source, somebody that knows you, your body, and understands the why behind your choices today, that is not information you should action. And I think that's the issue. So the whole Biggest Loser aside, on that part, when we look at a show like that, can we over-exercise to get ourselves healthy? No. Like, you do have to allow the body to recover. We are gone. Can we just put to bed calories in, calories out, or exercising your calories, or, this piece? We have to learn a little bit better about how our body's physiology works, but that begins with how are our weight health hormones working? Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so in alignment with a lot of things here. And I'll say this, kind of my two cents on this segment. Like, I've been in the healthcare field, health and wellness as a professional for years. And I now would say I'm a wellness entrepreneur, right? So a lot of the content I talk about on the show and a lot of, sponsors like Element and, a lot of other things that I do for work now have all led me to the truest belief I've ever had of pulling resources, pulling information, partnering, working, collaborating, whether it's personally, professionally, have all led me to this one thing to be true. And that is, nothing will ever be a better resource for my wellness, for my body, than my body.
Yeah.
Learning how to listen to my body has been the biggest game changer, has been the best. Now, I still get labs a couple times a year. I will check in with things clinically every so often. I got a great resource at home. Love you, baby.
Yeah,
a
totally.
healthcare worker.
Yeah.
And so, but ultimately it comes down to, now it's kind of passive, but it's still on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I am making time for, and I'm making sure that I listen to my body.
Yes. And I oh my gosh, like right there. And by the way, I want to be clear. I not just because they're a sponsor. It was not anything about Element.
Oh, no,
it was,
right, yeah.
Yeah, because I love it. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
this is great. I'm like, but there are some people that I cannot add any more sodium to, or somebody who needs more magnesium, or how do we get that balance? But
Yeah,
I love
that's
what
all
you
personal.
said. Yes.
Me and Element,
Yes.
we're homies, we're tight.
Yes, totally.
I have my own ratio,
Yes.
but that's for me.
Yeah, and you're like, I know this works for me. I love what you said. There are things that we should assess daily. There are things that probably to think about on a weekly basis. There are definitely things to check in on quarterly, and then there are things to look in at, from an annual standpoint. But can we please put to bed the executive physical, the annual physical, or using labs and just saying based on these labs, I'm going to go do this. So again, I love Function Health. Like, I use Function Health, or we use Cyfox. Like, we have all these like direct to consumer ways to now
I've used
get
them
labs
before.
tested.
They're great at home, easy.
But when you get those labs tested, you don't go action something based off an AI or an approved by a doctor, but off an AI report, or just your blood data, because you're going to go in a direction. First of all, that was in the moment. What's one of the most egregiously problematic? Okay, hit the lab that you think is like one of the worst labs. Let's do this. What's one of the worst labs that exists out there right now? It's so misused.
Honestly, I would look at inflammation markers.
Okay.
Because there needs to be a whole kind of like protocol for lab testing.
Yeah.
Inflammation can be so skewed. Glucose can be so skewed. Inflammation markers and metabolic markers, in my opinion, are the two categories of the most easily influenced.
Yes.
Either way,
data
points, biomarkers that matter, that really matter, but they're a timestamp.
Yeah.
And people don't really take into consideration 24, 48 hours leading up to them.
Yes.
And that timestamp of when you got them.
Yes. Okay. So where my mind was going is the whole glucose story, right? So, but to your point, the other one is inflammation. So I think we hit both of them. So
like
fasting,
cytokines, CRP.
Yeah, but let's just start with fasting glucose, right? So most people today don't even have a CRP. Like we're getting there, and nobody's looking at ferritin or ALT and AST in it through an inflammatory lens, but we need them to.
Protest to get that on just at least annual labs.
Yes, I'm telling you. Yeah. I mean, I went and gave a talk to, and I will not name them publicly. I have though, to the, like their C-suite executives, et cetera. And all of them were asking me like, what labs and how do we optimize our health and personalize? And I did personalized plans. And then I had that insurance and they would not cover my ApoB. And I was like, middle finger. I'm like, not only do you charge me so much, but I just told your executives, each one of you needs your ApoB checked. I was so mad. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Yeah. Glucose, a fasting glucose. So if you rolled over, like right now, you pricked your finger and you looked at your glucose, like, you're diabetic or we're just curious. We would get an in the moment reading. That's helpful for us to know, maybe I'm curious how in a moment of excited stress, how does my body respond? But did I have 2 espressos today? Was I up at 4 a.m? Did I have alcohol last night? What was my workout like? Am I dehydrated? Remember, there are 40 plus factors that impact our blood sugar, and only 10 of them are nutrition. So there's a lot that we have to sort through on that part. But using a fasting glucose is a ridiculous number for us to judge diabetes
as a one-off.
Or as a one-off.
Yeah,
absolutely ridiculous. So, and that's why we had people pricking their finger, all the time, right? So there's that. And now if we add on top that the majority of people do some version of fasting where, say you're going to get your blood work in the morning. You're like, okay, I'm going to go over to Quest to get my blood work done in the morning. So you do your nighttime thing. Now you wake up, maybe your kid got you up, maybe your kid didn't get you up, maybe take the dog out. But now I'm either having black coffee because they told me I'm okay to have that, or I'm not having anything. morning. I'm getting in my car, I'm answering emails, I'm going over to Quest, I'm waiting, or I'm finding out they didn't have the correct form.
Which they never do, by the way.
They never do. I'm super stressed out. I get in there and then they take my blood work.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that that's an accurate fasting glucose? I'm like, that's crazy. Like, it's like, I literally have had people prick their finger at home and test their glucose and then go into the Quest and get their lab back.
I did that.
It's a 15-point difference.
I did a side-by-side comparison. I was testing out Cyfox actually at home.
Yeah.
And then the same day, like an hour later, barely, I went to I think Quest Quest. And it was like significantly different.
Significantly different. So then let's look at the world of A1C. So then we enter in A1C. We're like, oh, this is great. Hemoglobin A1C. We're measuring glycation, which is what occurs, that stickiness, right, from the sugar in the bloodstream. So this was super cool. This was very novel because it started we were so happy to have that. But that's a 90-day average. You know what can get you to an average? A lot of different things. You can be like peaks and valleys that are crazy high and low. You can have all highs and no lows, or you could be rolling hills in that part. So you could have it the same A1C. So we're missing all sorts of people who are pre-diabetic. And when we're looking at it and we're with the A1C and we're on the side of like people saying like, oh, my A1C isn't getting better. I'm like, it probably isn't, because maybe you're now starting to hit exercise, you're working really intensely. Like, if you do a strong workout, your blood sugar better go up. Like, that's a marker that I look at to see, is your body stressed enough from your workout, on that part. So now we have A1C. So enter continuous glucose monitoring, or looking maybe at fasting insulin, or, some other things, so we can look at labs better. You brought up inflammation, and I think that's one of the ones that has, back in the day we used SED rate, right, on that part. Then we moved to CRP. Then we had high sensitive CRP. Yeah. Remember SED rate? Yes. Now we have ferritin, we have ALT, AST. I'd argue, I think David Perlmutter would argue that using uric acid, we can understand about, a little bit on that. I mean, there's a variety of things we can look at, but what we are not looking at is your body resolving inflammation, or is it that your body is turning on it, which we now know inflammation is a two-part process, and we need resolvins. We don't just need the omega-3s and a better ratio with omega-6s. So all these yahoos that are out there saying that don't eat omega-6s, first of all, as if there's a food in nature that is just an omega-6. So let's just leave that. But pretend that there was. So don't eat omega-6s.
Hold the butter and the omega-6s.
That's right, exactly. Don't eat omega-6s or don't have omega-6s because of inflammation. And you're turning around and you're, wait, hold on a second. In the body takes omega-3s and omega-6s, goes through an enzyme reaction, and creates pro-resolving mediators. Those are the resolvins that come in and tell your body that the battle's over, and please now resolve and turn off inflammation. So we actually use omega-6s, including arachidonic acid. We use it to resolve aspirin. One of the reasons aspirin is so good at being at turning down inflammation is our body actually has a resolvin that is derived from aspirin. So this resolvins, and so for years for me, I would say to people, eat fish. And then I understood why some fish oil supplements that are isolates of EPA and DHA, why they weren't necessarily doing the same thing in research that fish was, because fish make the resolvins, right, in their body, just like we make the resolvins. So when we look at inflammation today, we have to look not just at what somebody might be taking or what their labs are doing. We actually have to look at, are your symptoms telling us that you're actually resolving inflammation? Guess what matters with inflammation resolution?
What?
Your genetics. So some people do not go through that enzymatic reaction as efficiently to convert the omega-3s and omega-6s. And so if you're not going through that as efficiently, or if epigenetically that response is suppressed because of your injury or because of the body is in an autoimmune, it's fighting itself or whatever, we don't get the resolution on that part. So that's where, I'll end up using pro-resolving mediators as a supplement for somebody for a time period. If I can have them consume quality fish, which means no microplastics and hopefully a very low amount, if any, of mercury and high selenium to mercury ratio, like all the things we're looking for.
Wild caught versus farm raised?
No. Great point.
No.
Great point. Oh, you want to debunk another one?
I just got wild caught fish. Don't tell me this.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. But I do love, so I'm a big, number one, my brother's fly fishing guide. I love Alaska. So Alaska does a lot right, especially our wild salmon. The problem that we're seeing in wild fish is we are seeing the introduction of microplastics because, salmon, as an example, go out into our oceans. There's microplastics, et cetera. Do I think wild fish is still a good source? Absolutely. It's hard, but we are also seeing heavy metals and, other things because just the waters are damaged.
So would you say wild caught fish versus farm raised fish is becoming or already is a less better option?
Yeah.
Really? No.
But here's the problem. You can have crappy in both. So just separate wild and farmed and think about them in two separate ways. In wild, if you have a sense, ideally, if it's tested, and we have a sense of that provider is that, whoever's bringing that fish in, if we can evaluate in particular things like heavy metals and that source. And I think, again, Alaska, it's hard though, because you're like Alaska, outside of Alaska, there's been a lot of oil spills and, there's just a lot of stuff. So if you can have cleaner wild fish, there's a lot of advantage to wild, and I love that. And by the way, fish are so good for us for so many different reasons. Within farmed, there's real crappy farmed, there's better farmed, and then there's what I would call safer, like I would put the R on the end of the
because
safer.
The issue with farm, I've been led to believe, has been there is potentially a higher level of mercury compared to wild caught.
Right.
But now it's kind of like we're trading mercury versus microplastics.
And it could be, and we don't necessarily know, is there a higher amount of mercury? And we also don't know what else is in, based on where it's being farmed. There are really dirty farms where we're getting fish from. Then also, what is the fish being fed? And so if the fish, like a cow, is being fed like a lot of stuff that just fattens it up, but isn't actually better for it, or it's being given artificial coloring so that it looks a color like a wild, or that kind of thing. Yeah. But in farmed, it is very possible. And what I'm setting as a new standard, I've been, public about this and putting it out there, is with farmed, it strikes me that there is zero reason that we shouldn't be able to really test everything. So your testing in farm should show you detectable microplastic. They have it's a farm.
Okay, yeah.
You pull a fish out. I don't need
It's a contained environment.
Yeah, it's a contained environment. You know what
size.
you test the feed, test the fish, test the water, and prove it out to me on that part. And I think what ends up happening is, we can look at what are those better quality fish. And then I want everyone, not just, I want pregnant women to be eating fish all the time because it's so good for them. I want us to be able to
fish in general, not
fish
just
in
sushi.
general. Yeah. Well, and with sushi. So when your fish is safer, theoretically, it should be safer at every temperature. But I still don't feel comfortable saying to a pregnant woman, I would never say have raw fish on that part. I mean, that's a personal choice.
Okay.
If you are a pregnant woman, you decide, I'm totally fine, or if we make that decision. But I think there's too many potential hands or things that could touch things, et cetera. But what I do want I do want pregnant women to be able to eat fish, for sure.
Are you familiar with C15?
Yeah, Fatty 15. Yeah,
yes.
Totally.
What's your take on Fatty 15?
Okay, so Stephanie Van Watson, I interviewed her early on because I was like, first of all, I love her.
Her and Eric have both been on the show.
Love.
Friends of the show.
Yeah,
and again, total disclosure, I've been a partner with Fatty 15 for 2-3 years now.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I write about them in my book. I think that, the odd fat, right? The odd chain. So it's real interesting that all these fats are even chained, and then here's an odd chain. And we could go super geeky, but I'm not going to dive down in there.
Anybody interested, I'll make sure to link my episode.
Okay,
Dr.
cool.
Eric Van Watson and
Perfect.
Stephanie Van Watson, all about C15, this amazing new, now proven, essential fatty acid.
Yeah. And what I think is really interesting in that is, for so many people, there have been strong reasons to avoid dairy. And we also know that the quality of dairy just plummeted, right, across the board. So there is better quality dairy, and some people still do better quality dairy, but maybe you're also not incorporating that in on a daily basis. But I think what it's kind of like looking at all the different fibers, or looking at all the different probiotics, or looking at, and of course, looking at all the different fats and all the different amino acids. Our body needs all of these, right? So we're an ecosystem, and what we need all these different ones to all play around. And I think we can get pretty myopic and focus in on just be like, everybody needs EPA and DHA. And what happens is there's significant and really good research, but people can hang on to that for a long time. Like, I was just listening to an unnamed radio station yesterday, a story on magnesium oil. And they had two experts from places, so both are physicians, from places that are traditionally revered for medicine. And they were talking about how this is probably hogwash. Like, you're not going to, the magnesium and oil, and like, how's it going to work? But it seems to be helping people. So if it helps them, don't worry about it on that part. And I'm like, well, first of all, sitz baths and Epsom salt bath have been around forever. And when you rub something into your skin, you do absorb it. And I think what we have to be clear about is how, when we look at magnesium, I'm not going to say that you're going to have the same impact if I rub magnesium in a spot on, like I use it for a reason. If I have a shoulder pain here and I rub it in here, then I'm going to experience something. Or if I rub it on my temples, I'm going to experience something. If I'm working on my gut, I'm going to take in magnesium. Or if I'm working on, so there's all of these places. And it's so disconcerting when we ask people who don't practice this way about these ingredients. So as a dietitian, I often have to come into the room and remind people. My niece and nephew call me the backwards doctor because DR is doctor and then RD is, in that part.
That's good.
And I was like, I am the back. And sometimes I'm like, I just want to be clear because I come from a family of physicians. I was like, I chose to not be a doctor. It was not like that I couldn't step up or I couldn't hack it. I chose to not be a doctor because I wanted to focus on how do we do this? How do we assess you and how do we personalize your total nutrition? I think we're hearing from a lot of doctors today, and what they learned in school or even what they're doing in practice isn't this personalization and these protocols, and especially in the nutrition space, but yet they're commenting on it. They're like, nobody should have seed oils and everyone should have, EPA and DHA and everyone should do this. And you're like, no.
Well, still today, correct me if I'm wrong, please internet somebody.
Yeah.
Nutrition is an elective in med school.
Yeah.
They're not learning this
Totally.
stuff.
But even if they learned it, let's go back to our earlier comment. Even if they learned it, they're not practicing it. So for me, the practice of total nutrition isn't that I know that this is what magnesium does. I'm the person that knows how to use magnesium, and I'm also the person that's going to assess your intake of magnesium. Do you or do you not need a methylated B vitamin, let's call it folate or cobalamin?
Hot take. What are your thoughts?
I was asking you. Yeah.
I personally, I haven't been swayed.
Yeah.
I really am like, I can look at some stuff. I can look at people who take it, who I trust in the wellness and performance and cognitive boosting, high performance space, and can go, do I believe the benefits you're saying it gives you? Sure.
Yeah.
Have I been swayed like clinically or like some kind of sweeping proof of this stuff?
Right.
No.
Yeah. And I think, because I've had people be like, oh my gosh, Ashley, I have that MTHFR. And I'm like, oh, we all do. We're human. It's like we're human. Okay, we do. But if you have the variants, when we look at, if you go from folic acid, which is synthetic, all the way down to having the body be able to use the folate, there's a lot of steps that are involved there. So that requires enzyme activity and nutrients and breaking it down. So there's some argument that different forms, including the methylated forms, if the answer is we should be having folate, not folic acid, and folate comes from food. So if for most people, that's the difference. The methylated version may work better for someone, but do you know how many people I have that are on the methylated version and no one has told them, their doctor has said, make sure you get methylated folate, methylated B12, cobalamin. Nobody has said, go home and do folic acid finding in your cupboard. Look at your bars, look at your protein powders, look at your enriched flour products that the majority of Americans are consuming a lot of. Maybe not your audience, but a lot of people are consuming these. And when we come through that, all of those are fortified with folic acid. That's what you have to get out. You have to stop having that. And you have to turn around and say, I'm going to get my folate from food sources, right? So it's just that what happens a lot of times is when we have these recommendations, we don't have the discussion around the recommendation, and we don't have the assessment of everything that you're doing in that way.
So good.
Yes.
So good. All right, let me bring us back on track here.
Yeah, I know. Goodness, we didn't go anywhere on GLP-1s for you. Yeah, but it is all related. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important point to make, kind of on the point of what we were just talking about. Everything.
Yeah.
When we look at a biomarker, when we look at a food, when we look at a supplement, a biohack, a mindset, anything and everything in a snapshot, in a contained environment can be one thing.
Yeah.
But it only matters truly when we look at it collectively as a compound effect to everything else. I want to shout out Vince Pitstick was a recent guest on the show, this high performance nutrition coach. And he really, I think, drove this amazing point home in the episode about how for too long and for too many people, we've made the point of getting too niche when looking at the body of like, we are a collection. We are an ecosystem. Yeah. You need to look at these things, these hacks, these markers, these individual systems for particular reasons and particular seasons. But we're missing the mark. We're missing the fact that we are a collection of these systems, and we need multiple snapshots, multiple biomarkers, multiple just feelings, sensations, and collectively, what does that mean about our health? And how do we want to use this information with dietitians, with traditional allopathic care providers, with functional medicine, with all of that? I think, hopefully my audience is a little bit beyond that, but I think, by having conversations today, we're being reminded of it.
Yeah.
And for people new, to this journey, that's a very important beginning take-home point.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. We could have that conversation about creatine. We could have that conversation about GLP-1 and GIP and PYY and CCK, because with your weight health hormones, we need to take in protein in order to make them, because they are peptide hormones. So they're made from proteins. We take them in, the body breaks down amino acids, or maybe we're taking an amino acid supplement and it needs to form those and form those peptide hormones. So if we don't get in enough protein, or if we don't get in the right kind of protein and we're not able, and then if our digestion isn't working and we can't break it down or we can't synthesize it, then we're not going to have what we need on that part. So when we look at our intake, that is an ecosystem conversation. Like your digestion is going to be tied to your detoxification system, is going to be tied to your endocrine system, is going to be tied to your nervous system, your immune system. In the lining of the digestive tract where these hormones are secreted, that's where your immune reactions are happening, right? That's where you said it in terms of your immune health, and that's so important. And so when we insult or injure the lining of our digestive tract, alcohol, medications, stress, toxins, gluten not for everybody, dairy not for everybody, but things that we're not tolerating as well. All of these different things, when we do that, we're going to impair that function, and that means that something in the ecosystem is not going to happen, successfully. And I think that that's too often we come at it as like what is the solution for? And when you have an ecosystem, the solution is, how do I optimize the ecosystem? It's not, is there one tool that is a solution? Interestingly, the credit, what is being credited to GLP-1 agonists, reduction in inflammation, being better for cardiovascular health, being better for brain health, maybe helping with reduction of Alzheimer's and cognitive decline, definitely, obviously, food noise and appetite and helping us to lose weight, hopefully that being fat mass, definitely helping us with fatty liver, all of these different things. When we see that, we see the ecosystem in action. That's what's happening with these, right? They're enabling for the first time ever for all of these receptors, for them to actually be saturated and to then have an ecosystem reaction actually occur, instead of only like 2, 3, or 4 flowers getting watered and the rest of the garden, isn't getting the water. So I think we can look at them and we can actually learn from the medications if everybody's weight health hormones were working optimally, that's what we would see from, with GLP-1 agonists. We would see more people feeling this way. We would see this experience. There's a downside. When you come in and you take something in our bodies, GLP-1 agonists are designed to be on for 2 to 4 minutes, and then an enzyme comes in and breaks them down. When you go on a medication, it's now designed to stay on 24 hours for about 7 days a week. That's going to shift things. Your body is going to be in a metabolically active stage, pumping out a reminder for insulin to be deployed, or glucagon, or whatever the medication is doing, sending messages to your brain, all this other stuff that entire time, even while you sleep. So people are saying side effect, I'm fatigued. People are saying I'm disinterested in food. People are they're saying that their digestion is much more slow, or all these other things. Why? Because something that is supposed to happen for 2 to 4 minutes in the body is happening for 24 hours, for 7 days. That doesn't mean the medication is causing these as side effects. It means when you use a tool like that, you have to then optimize the ecosystem while you're on the tool. Yeah. And that's the difference. Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay, I'm going to need another 2 hours with you, please.
Okay, perfect. Good.
I want to scroll down to looking at beyond the scale and getting into these whole body benefits with GLPs. So we're learning that GLP-1s may also improve things like fatty liver disease and even reduce risk for Alzheimer's. How exciting is it that these drugs might impact more than just weight? And beyond the excitement, is it true? Is it proven? Is it just a flash in the pan, or now do we have enough years and data to show these downstream other health benefits?
So the only thing I take issue with, it's not the drugs. It's understanding that they're hormones. So they're hormone replacement therapies. Now, I want to be clear. The new medications that are coming on the market under this umbrella are not the same. But the ones that we're talking about here, semaglutide and tirzepatide, they are altered versions of our own hormone. They found in a Gila monster a peptide chain that looks just like ours, but it was altered. So instead of it turning on, being degraded after 4 to 5 minutes, it stays on for that longer period of time. So this is a hormone replacement therapy. This is like adding testosterone. This is like adding estrogen. This is like adding thyroid hormone. So when we think about that and we understand now, what it is telling us is, what does optimally functioning weight health hormone in the body look like? That's what this looks like, right?
And that's an individual aspect, right? We can't say collectively, like, for the humans.
For humans, no,
Oh,
that's
really?
not even a personalized one. If we
okay.
think about let's call it 1400, right? In 1400, none of the majority of the challenges for weight health hormone function, production, and deployment that exist today did not exist then, right? So today we have suboptimally functioning weight health hormones. So we need to improve their function. When we improve their function, what do? Those weight health hormones, not the medications, those weight health hormones, they go in and they tell what kind of fat mass and where fat mass is allocated. They go in and they regulate insulin and glucagon, and they tell those to go to work. They go over to the beta cells. They go in, they send messages up the vagus nerve into the brain to satisfy receptor sites there, and different messaging occurs. So a lot of the obsessive mindset, and that's why it hasn't just worked on people with food noise. It's also been a conversation around alcohol consumption. It's been a conversation around shopping. There are people who, we actually are interestingly using it in individuals with eating disorders, where their brain, so my brain was not in a place where I was going to keep up with a certain behavior. Someone else's was, because it was an obsessive thought for them, right? So these are going in and they're satisfying that part. So this is the job of the weight health hormone. This isn't the job, the credit should not go to the drugs. What the drugs are doing is allowing us to get the research of what does optimally functioning weight health hormone look like. Now, we also have to then recognize the flip side of that. We don't know everything about. We know a lot about these drugs. They've been on the market and in developing versions for good 15 years.
They first came out as diabetic medication.
Liraglutide, and that was a daily injectable shot. Well, who wants to inject themselves daily? And it didn't. And interestingly, the daily shot didn't have as much impact on weight health. Why?
Really?
Because if we're not, what you need, like for many of us, we need that override for for 5 days, 4 or 5 days, like to really create behavior change, because we are designed with a motion detector. Today's environment means we need a force field. Like, just imagine if you woke up in the morning and you had this force field. You activated your weight health hormone force field, and you're like, okay, I am not going to think about. I can walk by every coffee shop and I'm not going to be interested. I can open up my phone and I actually just don't see any of the messaging or any of the ads or any of the influencer content around what I should eat, what I should drink, or whatever. I go into the grocery store and I only go right to what my body needs, and a force field. Like, if we functioned with a force field,
it's like
we
being
would
able
survive.
to write your own life algorithm.
Yes, exactly. So for many of my patients say, like, literally for the first time in my life, there is quiet around this. Like, I have been thinking about food, even if I'm eating well, because this is not just, and I think that's an important thing. Even if I have figured out how to willpower my way, I still am having the thoughts about it. And so we're able to calm that. So I think the big takeaway for everyone listening is, wherever you are on this continuum, if you're in the space of suboptimal function, and we know that somewhere, research has said like 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy, and that was
93.7.
And that was before COVID, right? So that like the pre-COVID era. So I can't imagine that we've gotten a lot healthier. I'm just gonna throw that. So if we're looking at that, what is metabolic health? Come back to your weight. It's controlled. It's regulated by weight health hormones. So if 93% of us, we're all sitting here with some degree of suboptimal weight health hormone function. Perimenopause throws you into suboptimal function. Giving birth throws you into suboptimal function. Taking antibiotics, suboptimal function. Suboptimally resourcing your body and asking too much of it. There are all these different things that'll throw you into that suboptimal function. So when they're suboptimally functioning, the body is just not going to prioritize the things that we want it to. And that's how, we end up seeing not just body fat issues and allocation of fat in the wrong places, but we see bone loss and we're not able to have bone building occurring. We see people who are trying to build muscle and they can't build muscle, and they're just told eat more protein and take more creatine. The more protein one, I think, is probably one of the most interesting, challenging messages in this weight health conversation, because I think if we tell people to eat more protein when they have suboptimally functioning digestion, we're exacerbating a horrible problem on that part. So it gets, it's how we unpack it, in terms of how we help people.
What about specifically recommending or even, prescribing? Let's say I'm a doctor and a patient comes to me, not necessarily for being clinically overweight or clinically obese, but rather things like fatty liver disease.
Yeah.
Are we now seeing it, call it off-label use?
Yes.
Are we now in the era of GLP-1s?
Absolutely.
Technically for weight loss, it is an off-label use.
Let's call it for weight health,
for weight health, excuse me, yes.
Yeah.
Are we in the era now of like, I have fatty liver disease, or it looks like I'm getting fatty liver disease? Would a GLP-1 be my solution?
So it's not your solution, but it could be in your toolkit. I think that's the way we need to present it. So there's a yes to that. And I also think one of the problems is that obesity is the worst. I mean, right now, our marker, at least in the UK, like in Europe, they do a better job. But in the US, obesity is defined by BMI, weight for height. So if you're like, if we're waiting for a diagnosis of obesity, like that's so dumb, because we have plenty of people who are high fat mass and very poor, suboptimal muscle mass, and they could have a BMI of 26, and you're like, wait a second, that's kind of the pre-diabetes conversation that we had. So
I'm in that bucket.
Yeah. And so you turn around and you're, you're
the opposite. My BMI has always been like a high 26, even like low 27 sometimes.
Yeah.
I literally have been told by, this is the VA healthcare system, mind you, I've been told I need to lose 20 pounds.
Don't get me started with the VA. I mean, it's like,
because my BMI is too high. They're telling me, Chase, you're overweight.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
do
I'm
you
a little
share
fluffy.
with them?
But,
do you share a little fat mass percentage? You're like, hold on a second.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, look at me.
Yes.
Like,
No, I would be like, dear person sending me this note, I'd love to ask what your fat mass percentage is, because here's mine. Yeah. I mean, ridiculous.
I was literally body shamed by this doctor at the VA. He looked at the chart, looked at me, made a joke, and reached over and touched me. And he goes, next time I see you, I want a full 6-pack, not a 4. Your BMI is too high. Your BMI is too high. And like, not to derail the conversation, but this is just a whole nother conversation about healthcare.
Yes.
I was like, my guy, if you took 2 minutes to look at my chart and look at what I have been through in life, in my military service, what got me to be able to just be here today, you would not have said what you just said. Yeah. So on behalf of every medical practitioner, I will apologize to you, because the amount of people like you that happens to, and it's like, so we can expand on that. You I assume in other episodes or in different places in your life have shared what you've wanted to share on that part. But when we look at trauma, lived experience, acute trauma, chronic trauma, past trauma, especially early trauma, and what it does to our body and what it does to our vagus nerve, and when we look at the brilliant work of Gabor Mate, Body Keeps the Score. When we look at that and we look at what happens with trauma, I couldn't, Bender, Wilson, Bender, I can, okay, anyway, great, the Body Keeps the Score. When we look at what trauma does, and if we then extrapolate to an individual, you're not doing good enough, and your trauma will keep your weight health hormones from working. It will suppress your digestive function. All of these other trauma too. I mean, up to 2 generations above.
100%. So it's so problematic on that part. So, okay, practitioners, that's where, if there's one takeaway from here, own your own responsibility. So you and I have both said in 16 different ways, you are the best person to know your body. And if anyone doesn't respect your knowledge of your body, they're not the right partner to work with. So number one, but if you outsource your recommendations, or what you're, if you outsource taking recommendations from people that don't know your body, you're to blame. So I actually don't care if my doctor doesn't know anything about nutrition. If I don't tell my doctor what I'm taking and what's going on with my body, then that's on me, because like I did go in with the receipts. My doctor at one point in time, executive care at some, wonderful hospital, was like, okay, young lady, you need to take 1,000
Red flag number
milligrams. Yeah,
one.
1,000 milligrams of, and maybe I should just have been like, well, thank you. 1,000 milligrams of calcium. And I was like, oh no. I was like, no. I'm like, I've battled a life of constipation. I was like, I like free base magnesium. I was like, no. And he looked at me, probably the free base comment, but I was like, no, we can't do that. And I looked and I was like, oh, just in case, I want to show you my assessment of calcium. So here's how I get my calcium in. And remember, it's 1,000 milligrams total. So I get in 1,000 milligrams from my food. His face is like, he has no interest in what I'm talking about. And he looked at that and he's like, so I'm writing in your chart that you should take 1,000 milligrams of, he's like, I mean, if you want to ignore me on that part, he's like, and you should get it in a multivitamin that has iron. And I was like, so iron and calcium work, like they compete. And so then you wouldn't absorb one. And so I take my iron on different, and I don't take calcium and I take.
He's just covering his malpractice.
Literally.
Yeah.
And I just sat back and I was like, okay, so I did take in all of that information. And that's when I said, I'm going to leave here. Thank you so much for checking out my private parts, because that's what I was here for, and for like checking the boxes so that I can keep my insurance. And I'm going to go now to a practitioner that I can partner with on that part. That's the hard part. Finding people like us to partner with is a harder. We need more of this in healthcare.
And unfortunately, this is another huge contributing factor to the healthcare pandemic in America.
Yeah.
Especially in the veteran community, but also just, in general. Access to care is, I think, if not one of the most driving factors to the well-being state of America. And it's unfortunate encounters like this, like I have had and you have had, and I guarantee you
every
9.9 out of 10 listeners has had, that makes you go, that's why I don't go to the doctor. That's why I haven't gotten my, labs in 5 years. That's why I haven't had a physical in 3 years. That's why.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, at least still right now, it is not our fault, but it is our responsibility. To do the work for yourself.
To know,
like listening to and having
100%.
Conversations like this, but then also going and finding, like you can't just give up on one bad interaction with a doctor. 5, 10, I'm sorry, but like you have to, like you matter way more than to give up.
Yes. And I will say, for those of you that are just meeting me for the first time, I mentioned I've been doing this for a long time. So I wrote 2 books very early on in my career. And I was like, I'm never writing another book again. And I did 4 reality TV shows. I'm like, I'm never doing reality TV. And quite frankly, I was really happy up in the mountains in Maine, like also being like, I'm not going to do TV. I'm not going to do podcasts. I'm not going to do. And when this GLP-1 stuff started happening, I was like, you know what? I'm going to train practitioners on how to do weight health, hormone assessment, and do all of that. And a publisher came back to me and said, yeah, but you got to write the book on GLP-1 agonists. And I said, I don't. But you know what I realized had to be done? Because there are tons of doctors that are doing that. Like doctors, and that's great. We need good information, especially doctors that are prescribing it, and doctors can share different things. But I will go toe to toe with any doctor, because as a dietitian, and why I wrote a book, is everybody needs a how. You need to understand how. So that book there starts off with stuff, or if I could curse, I would say the other word. You have to unlearn. The curse word is in my book. And then it goes into, how do you do this? And everything in there is an assessment of how do you actually do this. So things like, are you a hose or a sponge? So I want you to drink 8 ounces of water, and I want to see how long it is before you have to pee. I want you to bite into an apple, and on a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to tell me how sweet it is, because that's going to tell me if your sweet taste buds are working. I give you specific questions to answer about your poop, and we use the Bristol scale, because I want to know, does it smell? Does it hurt? Does it bleed? Like we have to have those answers. And I know doctors aren't asking necessarily those questions. But then when we get into, like, I use an acronym and the metaphor of building a pizza. So in here, you start off with your crust, et cetera. We get into the toppings. Which supplement is better for you? Which medication should I use? What about are there any supplements that work like GLP-1s? All these other questions that I get asked.
Which do?
I'm going to tell you, just the one, and I'm selling it. I'm just kidding. But when we come in there and into that section, I want you to know how to assess your food intake and your supplement intake so that you can create your own total nutrition. We need to have more how. We need to have more implementation, like, how do I actually do this? Pass on all the Instagram that tells you, like, the inflammatory, like, oh, this is going to be so bad for you. Find the people that are going to help you with your how, that are going to help you then evaluate, is this choice actually working for me? Supplements, there's a whole category of supplements that I call GLP-1 or weight health hormone optimizers. Those are all things that directly and indirectly optimize the production and deployment of your weight health hormones. So that could be glutamine because the lining of the digestive tract. That could be magnesium because the calming. That could be getting in amino acids or consuming protein, but amino acid
Complete
supplements.
proteins.
Well, it could be getting in like the amino acids because maybe because of what you're eating from your diet, you don't have all the amino acids. And so maybe you take like an amino acid supplement. That could be fatty 15. That could be Akkermansia, Clostridium, bifidobacteria, because they go in and they literally, like Akkermansia literally go in and they chew on the mucin, and then that produces the butyrate. And then we've got our, triggering the L cells for secretion of these hormones. So all of that's there. There is no nature's Ozempic. So those are GLP-1 optimizers. And then there's this category over here that are, or what I'll call weight health hormone optimizers. And then over here, there's weight health hormone replacements. Those are your medications. There's this weird space in the middle. To date, I only have found one ingredient, and that is off of the New Zealand government. I do not sell this. The New Zealand government, at the time that pharma was researching the Gila monster's venom and coming up with these, the New Zealand government was going to plant compounds, and they were looking at all of these different ones. And they found about 4 that could actually help upregulate. In particular, they were looking at GLP-1, but they also looked at PYY and CCK and like, how can we do this? And they found of those 4, the only one that they could isolate in a form that could actually get to the small intestine and start to do this work is it's an extract of a hops that's found in New Zealand. So that they were lucky on that part. So that particular,
we should drink more beer.
So wouldn't that be great? Problem is it's not in all hops. Meanwhile, hops is brilliant. There are so many a million benefits to hops. Beer, not so much, because the alcohol part is going to override a lot of the benefits of the hops, but also once you're making the beer, you're losing a lot of those benefits. But remember, extract too, so it's a concentrated amount in that hops. And that one has been shown in human studies, so that's also important to increase GLP-1 production over the course of about 4 hours and PYY. And so that one I use for patients where sometimes I use it for people who are on an agonist where we want them at a lower dose. So for like the days like 5, 6, and 7 before they take their next shot. So when the dose is like kind of wearing off, it helps them. I use it for people who don't want or can't or don't need to be on the shot. And that one is going to be very much in the weight side of things. And I find it to work better for people where appetite, cravings, more of like the I might overeat beyond, at a time period. So that's where I would say the application. It's not the application I'm looking at for blood sugar. It's not the application I'm looking at for all the other benefits of the hormone replacement that we were talking about of the peptide. But there are those different, that one's Amerisate is the ingredient name. And so that one is in a category that I just kind of had named activator because I'm like, oh, it activates yours. So it's going to raise yours.
I see.
But it's not absorbed. So it just literally goes in and it works for 4 hours and then it's gone. So that also could be a good option.
As an enzyme.
Not as an enzyme, but as an up-regulator.
Okay.
Like
not
if
so
you
much
think
a catalyst,
about,
but an okay,
exactly.
Right.
So if you think about like, and similar because of the bitterness, it's like getting in those bitters and it's going to just go in. And what it's doing when it helps the body produce more of those, of GLP-1, PYY, et cetera, it means more receptor sites get satisfied. But if your vagus nerve isn't working better, if your digestion isn't working better, like it can't resolve those. So again, it's a tool as part of your system, which is the personalized system is what is your solution.
This makes me curious about this concept of other up-regulators.
Yeah.
Okay. To hijack my own podcast again, I want to ask, getting away from GLP-1s,
okay. Yeah.
But what are other good nutritional whether it's in a food or a drink or even a supplement, things that we could look at as up-regulators to enhance and to, dare I even say, optimize processes, things in the body that are not necessarily like, they're not the cause. It's not like taking this is not going to make everything better, but it just enhances the systems already present in your body.
Sure. So I think there's a couple ways to answer it. So there's a whole category of herbs. We've got adaptogens, and adaptogens are really cool because when we look at how they exist, they're from plant compounds, from plants that have figured out how to not just survive, but to thrive in places where they have no business, right? So like Siberian ginseng, if we look at something. So, you look at that and you're like, in Siberia, I mean, it's this beautiful flower and plant, and you're like, wait, how? So that goes into your body, and it does a bit of decoding of what does your body need. And so it'll upregulate or downregulate kind of depending. So it's like this nice tuning device, right? As an adaptogen.
Ashwagandha?
Yeah. So that ashwagandha would be another, there are a variety of different adaptogens, right? So when I look at adaptogen herbs, I think, that like rhodiola and we cordyceps and, et cetera. And mushrooms in the fungi space also work a lot like that. I love Paul Stamets' work. That was early for me. He fully took a kid that was viscerally opposed with every part of my being of anything mushroom into eating mushrooms and also taking mushroom supplements. And when you understand how mushrooms go in, but they have to be clean because, of course, they're bioaggregators when they go in. And so they're these ecosystem renewers, right? So they go in and can do that. So I think that's probably what you're talking about. The other side of it, when we look at nutrients and compounds, so I talked about things like pro-resolving mediators, or we could talk about magnesium and potassium and other ingredients or antioxidants, right? So we could look at selenium maybe, or we look at glucoraphanin. I'm a huge fan of glucoraphanin becoming sulforaphane. And when we look at those, they can be a part of an upregulation and optimization, but they can also be problematic because if you take too much of them, or if they're if they in any way throw out something else out of balance, then that's going to be a problem for you. Okay. So as an example, somebody could take a ton of magnesium, but if you don't have enough calcium, calcium and magnesium work in opposition to each other in and outside of the cell, and also with pumping of the heart, So we don't want what we're trying to do is get them into a better balance, better, not perfect. There isn't any perfect
in the right
there.
form too, right?
Yes,
Because with
right.
a lot of magnesium, you could find yourself in the bathroom pretty quickly.
Right, exactly.
Taking it for different things.
Yes.
Magnesium L-threonate versus magnesium
like citrate or glycinate.
malate,
Yeah. And remember, these are only in the supplement form. And then if we go back to selling sugared cereals, one of the reasons that, for 10 years, I evaluated products. I had evaluated over close to 1 million products when I was doing my nonprofit. This was before a lot of the third parties launched. It was called Ashley Koff Approved. And I come in, I'm going to check that out, check the marketing message. But the problem that we have from those ingredients is a lot of times the research that they're doing is all saying, you're getting marketing messages. So it's being done in a way that tees up their ingredient, this is better for you. A great example of that right now is almost all the research on creatine exists around creatine monohydrate. Very little exists around creatine HCl. I really like creatine HCl. I find it, at a lower dose effective. They've done a little bit of research in terms of looking at, and really good research in terms of looking at absorbed very well, using it at a lower dose, may not have the digestive issues. You may not need to load, all these other things.
What is creatine
but,
HCl?
It's just the form, done as an HCl, exactly. And so because all the research is on monohydrate, they'll say the most researched or the one that shows out, and you're like, that's a fact.
On a technicality.
It is a fact. And we used to do that too. When I sold Raisin Bran Crunch, I told you it gives you more energy than any other cereal on the market. Do you know how I was able to say that? We had more sugar per serving because we had sugar on the raisins, sugar in the raisins, and sugar on the flake. And that was what allowed us to clear through the regulatory of, Kellogg's and everyone else to say we have more sugar. Look at your mouth.
You've
right
come
now.
a long way, my
That's
friend.
right.
Wow.
I know. I mean, I was,
Wow.
I sold diamonds and hair color. So, there was a lot of, on that part. But that's really important for us to remember. So go back to the magnesium story I was talking about before. Both of the doctors made a point that there's no research on magnesium oils. Why? Who's going to make money off that? Nobody, right? I mean, maybe there'll be a company that says, I'm going to go out, and do that. But the companies that are making money, when a Clorox or Procter and Gamble or any of these others.
Johnson,
and they're like, well, we sell a magnesium supplement. We're going to go out and do a research study on that magnesium, or we're going to pay doctors to talk about this. Nobody's paying poor little magnesium oil. So then it gets denigrated in a story on the radio. That's because, again, I'm dealing with emails today that people said, I heard this story that magnesium oil doesn't work. And I was like, has it been working for you? Oh my God, I swear by it. It's amazing. So turn off the radio, listen to rock. I'm like done. I don't need, et cetera. Yeah. So I think that's where we end up. So I would say be careful of things that are promising of an upregulation, because your system shouldn't always, and our GLP-1 agonists are one of the greatest examples of that, because they are keeping you upregulated all the time. So my people, when people are on that, I really try hard to have some way for us to assess heart rate variability, or at least sleep quality, because if that goes down, then as that's going down, I know we have to optimize on that part.
Yeah. And I think even myself, in asking that question, I kind of got hooked on the regulation part. That's the kind of the sexy appeal to nutrition and even optimization.
Yes.
Right? We want, if
more,
I can,
higher,
exactly.
better.
But really, what we should be looking for, and true to functional mushrooms and adaptogens, they're modulators. Immunomodulators, modulators. So
ecosystem.
So if you're running high, it brings you back down to your homeostasis. If you're running low, it brings you up. So that's a good catch even on my part.
I find anywhere where we use the word more is where we run into problem. More protein, more energy, more like any of this. And so with energy for me, a lot of times I'll ask people, who will talk about their caffeine. Well, I need caffeine. I need more energy. And I was like, hold on a second. What does actual energy look like? Because up here, you're stimulated. And when your body is stimulated, I want to share with you all the things that are not happening that are really important for your body. So I'm okay for you to be stimulated. I love it. I work with professional athletes. I want you to be stimulated. I work with, if you're out on stage, or if I'm personally, I'm like when I am on stage and I'm wearing a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, I want it to be like look at that. I want to come off stage and be like, how do I get back to myself on that part? Because we cannot sustain being up here.
And that's a whole other podcast. Looking at glucose spikes. People freak their shit when they look at and you even wear CGMs and go, this apple spiked my glucose, this oatmeal, this bran muffin, whatever. But are you finishing looking at the graph of how soon after it takes to go back down?
Right.
That's a normal bodily response. We eat food, we drink stuff, we spike. Exactly.
It's so interesting to me. And again, there are certain people that are now making their business is about trying to teach people maybe to have flatline glucose. I don't know what that where it's like, do not spike. I do not want to spike. I'm like, oh, I want a lot of spikes, but I want to understand what's driving my spike. And I want to make sure that I can then modulate it on that part. Modulate. I'm going to use your word modulate. I'm going to then modulate it. That's right. We'll share it.
So amazing. Kind of just being mindful of our time. I want to get into, let's fast forward a little bit to the big picture and future of health here. So if you zoom out, what does the future of GLP-1s look like, do you think? And are they going to change the way we approach obesity and chronic disease as a society?
So cool if, I believe we're at an inflection point, and GLP-1s are a key, the GLP-1 medications are a key part of that. The inflection point is we're going to learn about our weight health hormones. But one of the inflection points is I hope we can actually ditch the term obesity, or we can better define obesity, because I think that we have, I think of Dr. Lyon, Gabrielle Lyon, in terms of muscle-centric medicine. We have got to start understanding that you are not a number and it's not your weight for height, or JJ Virgin, or, when we look at that. So I feel like my colleagues are doing an incredible job there. I think there is an opportunity to, just like people talk about generational wealth, I think we can talk about generational weight health. And that actually one of the things that has been really driven my mission as I've moved forward throughout my career has been, I always started off working in pediatrics, and then I've stayed working with families. And it's so hard when a parent is struggling with their weight health, because despite all of their best efforts, they often are modeling things or challenge, setting up a challenge for the next generation. And then we also know physiologically, if you get pregnant when when your body isn't at its best, that there's actual epigenetic, to your point earlier, and that's with the man and the woman, or the sperm and the egg, on that part. So I think we have this opportunity right now, if we go the way that I'm hopeful that we are going, and I tend to be a pretty positive person, I think we have the opportunity to create a generational weight health change. That is not an obesity graph going down. That is all different markers of health issues going down, including the impact, the psychological impact, the mental health impact of impaired weight health. So I do not, and I am not talking about, I was teased or I was called a fat kid. I'm like, okay, yes, and I took that with me, and that may have served me in some ways and was very challenging. But I think on the other side of it, there are many individuals that we know that are, and especially with all the trauma that kids are dealing with in schools and in everything else, where we have got to get their vagus nerves, we've got to get their digestion doing better. And when parents and adults who are our police officers, adults who are our teachers, adults who are our bus drivers, when they're better regulated, when they're experiencing better weight health, I think that has a trickle-down effect to a better society, for generations. That's what I get excited about. Where I think we're going to run into trouble is increasingly looking at these medications as isolated solutions. How they've come out and the access to them is ridiculous in my mind. When we had bariatric surgery and still have bariatric surgery, you had to see a dietitian, you had to see some version of a social worker, psychotherapist. There was a team approach.
You couldn't just go get a lap band,
right? For insurance to pay for it. I'm sure you could just buy it, and there is that part. But at least from an insurance, so the fact that insurance isn't demanding that part, and also the fact that insurance is actually telling overweight people who are overweight and obese now, in some instances, we're not going to cover this medication, and we think it's diet and exercise for you. That's a lot of problem. So I think if that side wins out or gets more attention, or it becomes over, my friend has this great, she's so brilliant, Dr. Lara Zakaria. She uses the word pathologize. Okay, so the pathologizing of weight is really problematic. And so it's basically, if we turn this into this idea of you have this diagnosis and here is the treatment, we are not going to do weight health better. We're not going to come in and optimize digestive health and all the things. I'm so lucky to, both as a friend, but as a mentor. And I think, like so many of us in this, large capacity, people like a Dr. Jeff Bland, a Mark Hyman, an Andy Weil, a Tyrone Low Dog, all of these people who came in from the beginning for me with a career. And this guy who in a bar was like, hey, I think it's, not what you're eating. It was your antibiotics. These people have come into my life to say, hey, Ashley, you need to go out there and you need to be the one that helps people understand that we have to repair the system, the whole body system. And we're going to give you the tools to do that. And I think that's that space that if we don't listen to ourselves, and find the things that modulate our system better, to me, that's the place where we could miss. I'm real hopeful we're going in the other direction, though. So I'm gonna grab onto that side. Yeah,
I'm with you. And before I ask my final question, to share one other little personal story is really that last part of what you just shared is what drove me out of a career that I was in love with. I was having friction with our chief medical officer for a while, the last year. And it ultimately came down to this conversation I'll never forget, where we were doing these test groups for a new, he was calling it, the clinical side of the business was calling it a weight loss program. We were calling it a lifestyle and behavior modification program that just so happened to result in body recomposition. It never stuck. The latter never stuck. And ultimately, it came down to him telling me that collectively, every person was not getting enough weight loss. He wanted more weight loss because that's what we could sell. But when I would tell him and tell every other doctor working with these patients alongside me and my health coaches, this person just had a mental health breakthrough about the single most traumatic event of their life. It makes me emotional every time I talk about it. That is the origin point of why she is 300 pounds. And why every time I've been working with this one patient for years, every time we get her below 300 pounds, she fights back. She resists because she does not feel safe. But that didn't sell. That wasn't sexy. That wasn't the headline. So
sugared cereals. I'm telling you.
So that's when I was like, I'm out.
I'm so glad, because I do really believe you are doing what you were supposed to be doing. And I think that at the end of the day, where this journey takes you, and I think you've mentioned you're a new parent, and I mean, this is societal change, right? And bringing these stories and coming through and bringing from, and being able to come through and all of what you saw in the military and coming through what you saw in practice. And you understand the impact of trauma, and you understand a broken body and how we can put a broken body back together. That's not the point, but can you put a human back together, or can you rebirth a human? And what does recomposition of body really look like, and what does that empower someone to do? When I talk to my team at the Better Nutrition Program about why we do what we do, if anyone comes in, nobody ever has on my team, but when they come in, if anybody says to us, oh, do you guys do weight loss or this? I'm like, hold on a second. We believe each and every person is here on this planet in this specific moment because there is a specific purpose for them. And you cannot fulfill your life purpose when you are fighting your health. You can't. That's your day job. When you're fighting your health, you can't. And so I need the person who is going to help the Cavs win the title. That person I think is there. We're going to get it this year, but joking aside, but we need the person who is going to figure out how to change our insurance marketplace. We need the person who is going to cure different cancers. And if they are fighting with their weight health hormones being suboptimally functioning right now, they're not going to get there, And that I almost missed out on my full life calling because I just kept trying to be I would listen and I'd be like, there's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with me. And finally, I'm like, I am not okay on any level. And oh, by the way, I would have drank goat's milk the rest of my life if it actually worked, if I'd killed the worm, But it was you had to learn to heal yourself, right? Yeah. So I would leave somebody with, if you are confronting right now something that is not working for you and not working in your healthcare, not working, if your physical body, your mental body, your mental health, if something you're up against it, you're being invited to come and say, I actually have to prioritize on myself. If anybody calls that selfish, absolutely not, because you're not where you need to be able to fulfill your life purpose. And I think that's that piece where it's we got to find that, we need you. We need everyone. Yeah.
Well, I feel like it was kind of just there, but to ask my final question.
Yes.
That's what this show is all about. That's what the mantra of living a life ever forward is all about.
Yes.
So Ashley.
Yeah.
Ever forward, what does that mean to you? How do you live a life ever forward?
Yeah, well, at this phase, at 52, I live a life ever forward by just being literally letting everyone else, it's the, I think some part of what is now being called the Let Them by Mel Robbins, and some part of, I'm a kid that loved the Black Crowes, so the song Soul Singing, to me, it's just I find that, and it's I just check in with me, and I'm am I in alignment? Is this what I want to be doing? I'm just pushing forward. Every day that I wake up and every day that I go to bed, I am reminded of, this might get upset, but the people that aren't here. And I believe that if I'm still here, there's that reason. I got to keep pushing. I got to keep pushing for that reason. Yeah.
There's never a wrong or right answer. Thank you for that interpretation. And I didn't share this part with you, but it actually, I'm here doing this because of someone who is not. Ever forward was the mantra of my late father.
Oh, I
passed away in 2005 from ALS.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And just as a greater testament, part of my own personal healing journey, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, was wrapping my head around this concept of accepting that or choosing to believe that his life's work was to not be here, was to pass this on so that my family now has had incredible opportunities to carry that torch in some really cool ways.
Yeah. Oh, wow. There's a lot. And that is a brutal, brutal disease. I'm so sorry.
It really, really sucked, to put it clinically.
Yeah, I mean, literally.
More so for him, but
No, but you're so helpless. You're so helpless.
You're a prisoner.
Too.
You're a prisoner,
Yeah, and you are too as the caregiver.
Yeah.
I think that's such an important part too, because that's part of your trauma story, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dad. Thank you, Ashley.
Yes, thank you.
Where can my audience go to connect with you, get your book? Thanks. Of course, everything will be linked down in the show notes. But
Great. Thank
talk to
you.
us about Your Best Shot real quick.
Yeah, so Your Best Shot, January 6th. And everything we've actually tied in there. Your Best Shot includes you actually having access to a coach live, not to speak to, but a live human that you can answer questions, because I want you to have the ability to like understand what's better for you. So this is really a book about personalization. That can be found anywhere that you buy books, and anything else you can head to the Better Nutrition program.
Awesome.